Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Greg Sloop, and it's time for Live at 5 on this Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Hope you've had an amazing day so far. We are looking at the New Testament. We are looking at a different chapter of the New Testament every day, Monday through Friday. Sorry about missing yesterday. Had such a marathon day. We just did not have the ability to make Live at 5 happen. Hope you'll forgive us. Be back next week on Sunday, and we'll have another installment of the Psalm 119 series for you that day. Today, though, we're looking at chapter 24 of the book of Matthew, day 24 in the journey through the New Testament for Monday, February 3rd. Now, it's been more than 24 days this year, but it's only 24 because we only do Monday through Friday for the New Testament series. Let's start in chapter 24, verse 1. Chapter 24, verse 1. And this is where Jesus discusses the fact that the temple will be destroyed. Verse 1. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Now, this was the temple. This was the temple that everyone loved and cared about. They were excited that they had the temple, and they're trying to show Jesus the temple as if he'd never seen or even imagined the temple before. And Jesus responds to his disciples as they're trying to describe it for him and point it out. Jesus then tells them, without any fanfare, this temple will be destroyed. Nothing left of it. And this is his recounting of the prophecies in Micah chapter 3 and 1 Kings 9. And later, the temple would most definitely be destroyed. So Jesus prophesied rightly and requoted the passages rightly, and then it came to pass. Then we move on to the disciples' two questions, a couple of short pieces here. Verse 3 of Matthew 24 says, "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?'" So they're asking a little bit about what he said about the temple. They're wondering about some of the other things he said all along in his teachings. And here is something you need to think about when it comes to these two questions. After leaving the temple and the city walls of Jerusalem all the way out, they're out of the city, sat down on the Mount of Olives right across the valley from the eastern gate. And after his telling of the destruction of the temple, they ask, when will all this come about? When will all these things you prophesy take place? That was their first question. Their second question was that they asked what sign they should look for that the end of the age was upon them. So when is it all going to happen, and what sign will we see? Well, Jesus did not give them everything they wanted to know just yet, but he did give them some of it. Let's look at what he says about the tribulation. "And Jesus answered and said to them, 'Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let him who is on the top not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. Well, Jesus answered them here with the teaching about the end times. First, he talked about deceivers that would come in his name, claiming to be the Christ. He talks about wars and threats of wars. These things will come, but the end is not yet. National conflicts will arise. Famine, disease, natural disasters will occur. And these are just the beginning of sorrowful times. Christians will be persecuted. They'll be hated. Many Christians will fall away and even hate one another because of the pressure on them to stand for Christ. There will be false prophets. There will be lawlessness. There will be a lack of love. But here is his admonition. Those who endure to the end will be saved. Wow. That means we can't quit. That means we don't need to stop. We need to keep serving God. We need to keep pressing on. He further says that all nations will hear the gospel before the end of the age comes. Jesus speaks of the desecration of the temple and the mass hysteria that will ensue. He calls for all his disciples to flee the city at that time. He instructs them further not to run after the lies or rumors that he is in the area. Do not be deceived. Well, then he goes on to talk about the second coming in particular. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, this is verse 27, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Well, some see this passage as a description of the rapture with the tribulation period following. Others think this is a prophecy of the second coming at the end of the tribulation period. And it's possible that it's both. I'll explain in a minute. This seems to clearly be a description of his coming after the tribulation. At the battle of the Armageddon, carcasses will be strewn, there'll be mourning. But yet the gathering does sound like a rapture, but then it is also possible it is the gathering of those who came with him to go to earth with him at this time. There's so much uncertainty here, but something we need to remember is that prophecies are not always given in chronological order. I'll allude to that again in just a minute. Let's look at the next piece. It's the parable of the fig tree, starting in verse 32. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Jesus gives the analogy here of the fig tree. He describes it becoming tender, shooting out leaves in the warmth of the spring season. He simply says this will happen at a time just before the coming of the Lord. And some equate this budding of the fig tree with the reestablishment of the nation of Israel, which, by the way, happened in 1948. While this is a possibility, that would mean that the generation that saw that event would not fully pass away before the coming of the Lord. This is just a bit problematic in the fact that Israel has now been a nation for 75 plus years. This does, though, signify that if this is the prophecy, then the Lord's coming is very near. Jesus then utters these words, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away." And this gives us the assurance, his assurance, that whatever he says, it will come true. He then talks about the days of Noah and how it resembles the time that we'll live in the age that Jesus will come. Verse 36 starts, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect." Well, here Jesus makes sure that his disciples know that no one will be able to predict the day of his coming. Only the Father knows that timing. Earth will be like the times of Noah. People will be in security. They'll think that everything's okay. They won't be thinking of impending judgment. And then Jesus will come without warning, and many will be left behind. And while the passage about the Lord's coming, where all could see him, was very much about his coming from heaven to do battle and set up a kingdom, this passage here seems to be referring to the rapture of the church. We believe that the second coming is a two-tiered event, if you will. First, God will rapture the church, and then second will come again to do battle with the armies of the earth and set up his kingdom for 1,000 years. Eastern writing, which the Bible is Eastern writing, like that of the Bible, is typically stream of consciousness. Whatever comes into one's thought at that particular time, they write it down. Sometimes they're recalling it from hours or minutes before, and they just have to write whatever they remember at the time they remember it, which means that men wrote as they received inspiration from God, but it was not necessarily recorded in perfect chronological order. This could explain why this passage speaks of 2 events that are related, but not necessarily simultaneous. And then the final piece of this chapter talks about the illustration of the 2 servants, starting in verse 45. "Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household, to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, 'My master is delaying his coming,' and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and at an hour that he is not aware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Well, let me summarize this last section. Jesus here encourages his disciples to be faithful. He speaks of the blessings that come to the faithful. He announces the reward for those who are faithful. But then he identifies the guilt of those who deny his coming again. And he pronounces the judgment on those who act sinfully in his absence. He warns them of the hell that awaits the apostate. And here's my thought to finish this up. Lord, help us to always be ready for your coming. To always be ready. You don't know the day or the hour. You can't take days off. You can't take moments off. You have to be ready at whatever time he may come. And if you are, he'll take you to be with him in glory forevermore. But if you're not, well, you don't want to face that eventuality. You don't want to do it. Be sure your calling is an election is sure. Be sure, be positive that you're ready to go when Jesus comes again. And that's the word for today. Good to see some of our fine folks on with us today. There are about 13 of you on right now. I know it goes up and down during the broadcast, and there's a whole lot more that watch later. Whatever time of day or night you watch, we're always happy to have you. Good to see right now Sharon Noblet, Kathleen Powlis, Jean Goodman, Richard Britt, Vivian Thompson, Otamanga Grace Bible Church, Evangelist Hezkiel Assad, Tommy Morrow, Jack Weinkoff, Hector and Jasmine Rivera, Crystal Cretin. Thank you so much, guys, for being on with us today. And if you watch later, thank you as well for being on with us then. It is our honor to bring the word of God. And yes, Jack, got to be ready. You got to be ready. Always and forever, you got to be ready. All right. Thank you so much again for being with us. Spend some time with God every day in the Word of God and prayer. This is a great way to do that if you're willing to meet with us every day, Monday through Friday, to go through the New Testament. Hope you'll do that and stay with us every day. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., the next blog will be loaded up on the Devoted to You blog site, which is gregsloop.com. That's how you find it, GREGSLOOP.com, gregsloop.com, and we look forward to seeing you hop on there and read the blog sometime in the morning. It'll be ready by 6 a.m., but you can read it anytime tomorrow, and then be right back here with us tomorrow for Live at 5. We're praying for you. We care about you, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, Live at 5.